this was a way of us actually doing a very cost-effective way where we could actually we had, I think, 4 quite large customers before we were able to go out to market to raise our seed funding. And it was, we could show that we had traction. And today, 85% of our revenue is outside of Australia and New Zealand. It's North America, it's Europe. We've got deployments into South America. It has allowed us to scale from the wrong time zone and wrong part of the world to have a global product. And that's down to AWS.
Let's go back to the beginning. You mentioned it earlier, the co-build, and then let's talk about co-market. So co-build, what was that part about, and how much have you worked with AWS product and engineering teams on that co-build part?
Yeah, no, great questions.
Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of Inside Partnering. I'm Chip Rodgers, and first of all, Happy New Year to everybody. We're in a new year here in January, and I am so excited to be joined by Grant de Leeuw. Grant is CEO and founder of DataMasque. And first of all, welcome, Grant.
Happy New Year, Chip, and thank you for having me.
Yeah, I'm so excited, Grant. You and I got to meet in San Francisco, I think 2 or 3 months ago at the AWS Startup Summit, and you're in the data privacy and data masking business industry, and we'll talk a little bit more about that as well. But really, I think a very topical topic these days, a hot topic, I guess I'd say. And prior to that, you have been in the telecom industry. You were previously with a company called Ilion, which is like a Dun & Bradstreet kind of data company. You had previously actually founded. Did you found Talking Tech?
No, I wasn't. It was a 30-year-old startup, Talking Tech, but I was in charge of the commercial side of the business. So based out of London.
Interesting. Based in London. Yeah, you were in London for quite a while. And then Ilion bought Talking Tech.
Yep,
Yeah. And then prior to that with Telecom New Zealand, and again, a lot of background in data and data management and security and all those topics. So here we are. I guess, Grant, first, again, welcome. And let's start with just talk a little bit about DataMasque and what you guys are up to these days.
Yeah, absolutely. So thanks for having me on, Chip. And it was great meeting you at that happy hour event in San Francisco. So DataMasque, we exist to solve the problem where large enterprises, and particularly regulated, so think financial services, healthcare, government is actually a really important vertical for us, where these organizations need to leverage their customer data for their own internal purposes. So data consumers being development, testing, analytics, that the tailwind at the moment, and the big one is around AI and how to leverage AI within these regulated industries. But the challenge they have is that because of the regulation and security privacy around some of their most important data, so customer data, payments data, that they actually really struggle to leverage it internally because of all the controls that are put around that data. And the solutions that we saw out there in the market, and this is, you speak to 10 CIOs, they'll all tell you this is a problem around how do they leverage data internally in a safe and secure way. And the solutions are out there in the market were really either over-indexing on security, so while they will remove the sensitivity of the data, they're actually effectively was trashing the usability, or people were sailing very close to the wind and maybe using customer data in places that they shouldn't, and trying to really lock down access because they know what they're doing that shouldn't really be there. So we felt there was an opportunity to actually create what we call high-fidelity synthetic data. So DataMasque, we've developed a platform that allows us to deploy into clients' production zones. So we're right beside the real data. It's a complete air-gapped dark site deployment. We have no access to it. It operates in their most secure zones within their data stores. And because of that, we allow DataMasque, the platform will actually understand data relationships, where sensitive data is, and it will actually highlight what is sensitive. We agree on a rule set, or the customer comes up with a rule set. And then effectively what the tool does is it allows you to take a copy of that sensitive data. We remove the sensitive information, but replace it with this high fidelity, synthetically identical customer data that looks and acts, and we maintain all the consistency. We mask down to a field level, so the accuracy it is an exact copy. And then it's that de-identified data that is then pushed into those less secure, less governed environments. And we can do this across on-prem mainframe sort of old green screen systems through to Snowflake, Databricks in the cloud. And it allows organizations to actually get a true representative copy of their production data in these lower environments. And like security is important and privacy and all of that, but the biggest benefit is around the usability of the data. Actually, organizations start to accelerate innovation. There's no restrictions anymore on who's got access to data. They can share it with third parties. There's no data sovereignty challenges around it. And so security is important. It's actually the usability, like creating usable high fidelity data in these lower environments is what's valuable. And so that's the problem we solve. And yeah, that's what we're doing.
So that's really interesting. We've all, I'm sure, have gotten used to when you're in some kind of a test environment and you see the Donald Ducks and the Mickey Mouses and things like that.
Yeah.
It's not very valuable and a little bit goofy. And I'm sure that it doesn't, I would think that this would also give the engineers and product teams more reliable test data and test cases that they can then run.
It's the edge cases of the data that breaks systems. And that's why it's important that we mask down to a field level. And so if you've got some dodgy data in there, you need to be testing your systems and developing on data that is truly representative. And that was some of the challenges that we saw in the market, is that organizations might have the Donald Ducks and the Mickey Mouses in there, but it's perfect data. And some of the other sort of de-identification solutions, they'll put everything to the perfect email address and everything to the perfect name. You test it, you go, yep, this is great. You roll it into production and everything breaks when it comes against a date of birth that's 01/01/1900, or there's a bit of data in there that shouldn't be in there, particularly with some of these older systems. And then it breaks. And that's the problem that we actually initially set out to solve, is that the messiness of production has to be replicated into these lower environments. And then the other piece is you can't just do it in one system. Testing in one isolated or developing against one isolated system actually is not representative, again, with the interconnectedness of data now, where if you're doing an online sign-up journey, that might hit 5, 10, 15 different systems, might even reach out to a third party. To actually test that, you actually need all the data to be consistent. So if you've changed Chip to John in one system, you need Chip to be John in every other application it's doing. So has John been a customer before? It does a lookup. What is the credit rating on that? Yeah, all of those systems actually interconnect. And which is why a tool like DataMasque exists, because we can create that synthetically identical data across their whole environment. And as organizations get more into multi-cloud data and SaaS applications is a big one, you need that consistency of data. So you can't just do it in a single application. Go, right, I've masked my Salesforce data, that's great. You then test an online sign up, it does a lookup with another data set, and it breaks, because it's like, well, we've got a Chip, we don't have a John. And that's what we solve.
Interesting. And so it's fascinating, because it's not even, you're not really focused on a lot of security system. There are so many security companies, and they're typically focused on production data, right? That's where all your data is and where things are at risk and all that. You're actually not focused on that. You're focused on how do we make sure that the engineers and the product teams that are building our next solution have good data that they can really rely on, that looks like what it's going to look like. It's all it's all in the back of the house, right?
Exactly right. But Chip, what a lot of organizations miss is that 70 to 80% of an organization's data footprint can be non-production. You have your production data set, and then organizations will take a snapshot or a copy, and they go, we need something in QA environment. We need something in our development environment. Right now, we're going to be doing some AI fine tuning. We need copies of these data in this place. A developer takes a snapshot. It's significant. And so for one production system, there might be 8 copies of that. And all of those are lower environment, non-production. And then the other piece that is these are environments that are less governed. There's less, the security controls are not over it. Right. There's more users accessing it. So it's actually, this is where a lot of the breaches occur, is actually in these lower environments, because it's the same data without the same controls. Because you can't afford to put the same controls that you put around your production data across, and 8 or 10x that across all the other environments. So they just simply don't have the same control levels. And unfortunately, a lot of the breaches are occurring in these lower environments. And unsecured S3 bucket, thankfully this is getting less with AWS permissions, but that was very common. That one of the big T-Mobile breaches in the US, Uber breach, that some of the largest breaches that occurred have been test environments.
Really? That's really interesting.
Yeah.
Huh. So you mentioned AWS, and I talked about it at the beginning, just hearing your story, working with AWS and Marketplace. Tell me a little bit about that story, because you're based in New Zealand and you're a startup, right? And yet you want to have customers global. Your solution is something that applies globally in any company, and you wanted that reach. Tell me a little bit about that journey and how you're working with AWS to solve that.
Yeah, we started the business about 5 years ago, and it was bootstrapped. We really believed in the problem we were solving. We believed we could build the product that was going to be the right solution to solve it. But we were bootstrapped, so we didn't want to go and give away equity without proving that we had something. The initial plan was to let's get a couple of customers and show that there's something here. But it is a very technical product, what we're doing. And because we're selling to large enterprise, we've been like that from day one. So we didn't chase the whole SaaS type business. We knew this had to be a dark side deployment if we're going to sell to large regulated industries. We knew it had to have the controls in place, and a huge amount went and still going into our product development. But we then needed a very cost-effective way of going to market. Now, traditional paths might be, and look, traditional paths, selling your own market and then build out. Well, and what we're selling, there's actually very few customers in New Zealand. And the New Zealand way, or Kiwi way, we can be quite laissez-faire around data security. So we knew we had to go offshore first and be successful. And we needed a cost-effective way of doing that. Paying US salaries, we're doing that now, but when we're bootstrapping, when it's our money into this business, I need to find another alternative. And early on in our journey, we met with AWS, obviously worked with them in the past before this, and they talked me through Marketplace. And I believe naivety was a benefit here, but they're talking about this.
Isn't that always the case with founders, right?
Yeah, but it was like, I came out of the meeting going, I assume this is what everyone's buying off Marketplace, and this is how everyone's doing it. So get on the bandwagon. And so we did the paint by numbers of the co-build, co-market, co-sell, and as I said, this was April 21. We started the business. I think we had that sort of chat in September. I think it was the following sort of April 22, we actually got our first listing on Marketplace, and it was, which is normally the story, absolute crickets. So nothing happening at all. So we're there ready to place the orders. But then we actually got one of our very early customers, and still a customer today. I'm very grateful to have them. Did a case study on our solution, so that was Best Western Hotel Group. And then from there, we actually, solution architect for AWS was doing a research for one of their customers in Australia. And so they reviewed about 4 or 5 masking type solutions on Marketplace and felt we had the best one, and kindly wrote a blog about our solution.
Wow.
And that blog went up in July, so similar time as the case study. And then suddenly it was like we had the co-build, we'd done that. Then the co-marketing started to happen with this blog and this case study. And I'm getting into real detail here, Chip, so you can get this out if you like. But we then did a RDS service ready competency of all bloody things. And it was more like one of the AWS guys who'd been working with us asked us to do it. We thought, why not? Won't take long. We did this competency. And that got us from the second page of masking on Marketplace to first page. And we just then, I remember we got our first, because we have a free download as part of our tool. And I remember waking up one morning here in New Zealand and someone had downloaded the free trial. And I was like, holy shit, we're getting noticed. And then the leads started to come through from AWS sellers who were, hey, a customer has got this problem. AWS didn't have a very good solution for it. Most customers want to be masking AWS and other clouds, other on-prem, etc. And that sort of flywheel started to turn. And for us, it was, look, a lot of it was dumb luck around timing as well. So it allowed us to build a business from New Zealand. COVID was sort of in and out at this time. And so travel was locked down.
New Zealand was famous for the lockdown.
Yeah.
We really were
very
locked.
If you left, you couldn't get back in. It became a lottery if you could get back in or not, and put into some COVID hotels, and horrific part of our history. But what it became a leveler for us. So I didn't need to be the company in New York or out of San Francisco, because those companies were also just a little Zoom box on someone's screen, and our customers are all at home. And so suddenly it didn't matter where I was. And sometimes I'd be in this room here trying to make it look like it was daytime when it was 3 a.m. in the morning, and pretend we were somewhere else. So that happened a lot. But it gave us the opportunity to actually start pitching where no one was going into these customers' offices, prospects' offices. And so it gave us an opportunity with Marketplace and for people to discover us. But the other piece was actually, and the huge piece for us, was the ability for us to actually transact. We didn't have to have a bank account in the US. We didn't have to have an entity in the US. We could actually do this all from here, and done it in an extremely cost-effective manner. So when we started with AWS, I think they were taking it was 20% cut, and then very shortly after they dropped. But it dropped it to